Bit of a medley there, put together by Pat St. John back in the heyday days of WPLJ radio in New York. And I was growing up during those heyday days, and I was deciding what kind of music that I liked. I mean, I liked eclectic music. I loved rock and roll. I kind of moved towards the deeper cuts on albums and things like that. But if you were into the serious definition of classic rock, the station that defined that pretty early on, right into the early 1970s and beyond that, was WPLJ, and one of the great voices of that station at the time, and then someone who also went on to WNEW, which was my favorite station for many years, was Carol Miller. And not only was she doing this radio 30, almost 40 years ago, she's still doing radio. She's still in New York on WAXQ, Q104.3 FM in New York. She also has her autobiography out called Up All Night, because she was there in those crazy, nutty days of program directors and, people from, rock bands coming into the studio and meeting these people who would soon or eventually become famous. She has all sorts of wild stories about the wild days of rock and roll radio. She played it a little too wild this week. I just, before we're getting her on the air here, I will warn you that she's got a bad cold. She's been running around a lot doing interviews, promoting the book. And so, of all things, we've got one of the great voices in rock radio, and her voice is shot. She has the flu, and she's still getting over it. So, I apologize for making her be on the air with us, but I do want to do this interview. We're going to keep her time a little shorter than I'd intended, just for the sake of her throat, which is still her career. But we are nonetheless very excited and happy to have with us in the neighborhood Carol Miller. Carol, can you hear me? Are you there?
Well, I can hear you, but it's very, very low. If you can boost up your volume, it would be great.
I will do my best here because, if I get too close to the mic, I start popping a little. But is this better?
Well, a little better, but,
Okay, I popped it up a little more.
I'll hang with it.
How are you feeling?
Well, this is really, really funny. I have the world's worst flu, so I can't talk. And I'm a DJ, so it's an occupational hazard. But, you see, my point in life is you go to work, you go to the job, you go to your appointments, and if they don't want you, they'll send you home. So I'm here. If you don't want me, send me home.
Well, I certainly want you. I'm thrilled to have you on the air. If your throat really starts to give out, let me know.
Don't worry about it.
Great. But let me ask, so this is an interesting question for someone who's been in the radio and announcing business for so many years. Obviously, you've had colds before and times when you had to go on mic. What did you do? Did you just play more music? Did you use cough drops? Or is it that thing where sometimes when you're on the air and being a DJ, you're magically healed for 4 or 5 hours and then you get really sick again?
Well, no, it's, when you're on really big radio stations, they really don't want you on the air like this. You know what I mean? I mean, this is not the way I should be doing my show. That being said, I've shown up and they go, no, you don't sound good. But I don't have that's not really my big problem in life. I haven't had a lot of this. It just happens to be now, when you're the host, if you were the guest, like I'm the guest, it's funny. You can laugh at me because I'm the guest.
I will laugh at you, yeah.
When you're the host, you can't do that. So,
Well, cool. Well, let's talk, though, about radio and your start in radio. The thing I had no idea about is that you were a law student at Hofstra University, and you came out with a law degree. Did you take the bar?
Yeah, I did that. Well, actually, I started in radio as an undergraduate while I was at the University of Pennsylvania, and I was working in Philadelphia from New York, but working in Philly while I was still an undergraduate. Then I decided to go to law school. And I went to law school during the day and did radio at night.
And how did you manage to do that? I would figure it takes every minute of your life an ounce of strength just to try and learn all the law. I mean, were you an okay student?
Well, I'll tell you, hopefully you hear my book and why I wrote the book. I'll tell you in a minute. It's pretty funny, but when you come from a background that you think you got to you're no good or you have to be a professional. You just do what you have to do. And the radio business wasn't really a business. It was my hobby, even though it was my job. So I continued to go to school like I was supposed to. And, yes, I had absolutely no time for anything, but it was good training because now I have no time for anything either.
Well, you have, I guess you just mentioned that you have written your autobiography. It's called Up All Night, available from HarperCollins, pretty major publisher there. A couple of things we want to know about the book. First of all, it's about your life, your career. Also, let's get this out of the way immediately. If you plunk down your hard-earned cash to buy this book, which you should, you get, or you give, 5% of that, of what you pay for the book.
Royalties,
the royalties go to, tell us?
The Breast Cancer Research Foundation, which is really one of the best cancer research organizations. They do all these Play for Pink things, and they're just wonderful people. They've made a lot of progress, and so, there's an MO that goes to buying the book. You're helping somebody too.
Now, for people who may not know or remember or know your whole story...
No, nobody knows my story.
Okay, well, then tell us, why would you specifically be giving 5% of your royalties for cancer research and breast cancer research?
Well, up until now, even though I've been on the air all these millions of years, I've never told anybody, but I've been a pretty serious cancer patient and kept it to myself. And the only reason I put it in the book is because if somebody asks you to write your memoirs, well, you got to tell what happened to you. So this is kind of a way for me to, help out, give back, blah, 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 etc. But the interesting part is that I was never going to write a book, which is what I was going to hope you were going to ask me.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but go ahead.
So I got a letter from the publisher saying, you've been on the radio for 1 million years. You must have stories. Would you like to write your memoirs? And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. All they want is a bunch of gossip. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if they don't? What if I can do something different and do something semi-worthwhile? So what I tried to do is what I call a cultural chronicle and take it from the point of view of a kid who's growing up in America in the middle of the 20th century and sees all these things happening. I'm still that kid, but I saw television come in, all the radio, I was there when JFK, all these things happened, and I was pretty much on the scene for a lot of different things, and so I try to reflect that in the book, and I also try to reflect how the FM radio business got to be the business it is. And so I think it's a story. It's not just for people who like radio. And I was very, very appreciative that I was given this opportunity because, hey, how many times does somebody walk up to you and say, hey, you want to write a book?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I wish somebody would say that to me.
Yeah.
I keep pitching. Yeah, no, that's great. And plus, you've had the life to write about between being in the radio, between your personal life, between your history dealing with and being a cancer patient. See, not to dwell on the big C, but the initial cancer stuff, the breast cancer stuff, that's already going back, 25 years?
Yeah, see, I don't, people have heard enough about this stuff in the media. And I didn't want to make the book about that. When I started with it, you didn't talk about it, and I've had other problems with it. But let's just say that it's something that I've taken along with me, and I have the best people at Sloan Kettering, and I think that in today's day and age, if you can keep something under control, you don't have to put your problems on everybody, and that's kind of one of my points, It's like it's great to contribute to charity, which is why I am contributing to charity, and maybe you will by buying this book. But the best way you can contribute to charity is to keep yourself from getting sick and having to rack up medical bills.
Well, wait. I don't think people can, unless, you're meaning staying away from, power lines or something.
Kidding.
You can't keep yourself from getting cancer.
No. I'm talking about absolutely not. checkups and stuff like that.
Oh, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was just going off on a kind of a funny tangent. In general, people often don't look after themselves. Then they get sick, and then they rack up their own medical bills. But not particularly in this case. If you look after yourself, you'll save yourself aggravation and everybody else.
Okay.
So I'm saying that with tongue in cheek.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's right. And it's not that I want to make you dwell on the medical stuff. It's just it kind of shocked me that you had the story from years ago, and then 2 years ago something else came up. That's what I'm talking about. It's like,
well, if you have it, it sticks with you, and you never know. And I'm just lucky that I get to fight it. So that's just kind of a sidebar in the book that you can do what you do and not make it your whole life.
Okay, let's move away from the medical. Into the fun stuff, into the stuff about radio and then your social life too. Because that's in the book as well. So okay, you're at, I guess, PLJ. Let's get to that big station, that famous station. It was one of the defining sounds of that era of discovering that kind of music. So, how much freedom comparatively did you guys have as DJs at PLJ, or did it sort of morph while you were there, and the suits had more and more, and the advertising people had more and more say?
Well, this is a very interesting subject, which I wish I certainly had a better voice for. But, it's a blanket perception that freedom is the best thing for everybody at every radio station. And what I'm trying to tell you is, if you are trying to play the music that most people want to hear, and you're also trying to find out what most people want to hear, and the availability of the music, there's just so much of it. Well, how would you, as one person, know that? So, in the early days of progressive rock, of course, if there are 10 albums, you play 10 albums. But as hundreds of albums start coming out, how do you know? So I don't like, quote unquote research, but you have to use certain methods to find out what people like, including how many albums are selling. Does this artist sell? Do people like this person? And so it kind of gets all bundled up into what people call a format. That can be taken to extremes, of course, but what I'm saying is it's not, the freedom thing is a strange issue that if you like what I play, why do you care whether or not I selected it? That's my question.
Oh, my gosh. Well, if you're willing to have a debate about this, I mean, I wish you did have a better voice and I wasn't straining it, when you're talking.
Yeah.
But it can be argued, and I would certainly argue. I mean, I'm not an anarchist by any stretch of the imagination, but for me, a responsibility of a DJ is not only playing what people like, but in some ways to say to people, if you like this, you're going to like
that.
You're going to check this out, and this is so different. You might like this too.
This is a whole other discussion.
Well,
we're talking about when you're running a business, the business of these big radio stations. See, I'm talking about walking the line, staying in the business, getting to do things, and still having the business end of it. Because if the commercial end were not there to support playing some of the new music that we do, we wouldn't get to do it at all. So you have to go right down the middle with it. What I'm saying is you have to look into what people like, what do the majority of people really want to hear, and then give them a little bit of the other stuff if the business wants to stay on the air. And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's fair. Well, but that also leads to a couple of questions. I mean, you are and have been talent in full capital letters and quotes, talent for 40 years. But you think in some terms like a program director or station.
Yes.
Oh, have you done some of that?
No, but when I started as a progressive jock, I always kind of had my own format because my idea, when I was starting in progressive radio in 1971, is listen, I'm doing a show for people, so I would come up with let's say I'm going to play 3 songs in a row, 3 records. One of them will be something brand new, maybe, that I can introduce. One of them will be something they already know that they're going to like. And the other thing will be something a little deeper from one of the albums that they may have.
But that
so
is...
I kind of came up with the idea for myself, presenting my own shows, because it's human nature to, you can only accept so much new material at once.
True.
And really recognize it. For example, if you heard a new song and you only heard it once, and then you heard 10 other new songs, you might not remember that one new song that you liked. But if you heard that one new song, some stuff that you knew, then you hear that new song a few hours later, you probably remember it.
And that is all absolutely true and correct. But at the same time, you were given, at that point, the freedom to develop that format. It was your
yes.
thing. So you weren't told. You developed for you what worked for you, this idea of,
I think it's interesting. I mean, all kinds of discussions are interesting. But, I was a biology student. I got into medical school. I didn't go. But if you are in that area, like science, everything kind of relates to biology. And there's a reason why people are wired up a certain way. And we're just wired up to, have a certain familiarity with certain sounds, etc. I mean, I kind of knew that. So just hitting people over the head with a lot of unfamiliar stuff, even if people say they want it, they're not going to be able to accept all of it. It just doesn't work that way.
True. No, I mean,
think about it.
I mean, even
everybody will say the same thing. I want to hear new stuff now. But then afterwards, they want to hear something again. No, it's all of it is Darwin's in there somewhere. And I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but it's true.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing at all with you. But, I mean, I guess, and we're almost having a meta argument because we're kind of on the same page.
I like these things.
I'm sorry, what was that? What was that?
I said, yeah, but I like these kind of arguments.
Oh, yeah. But, well, they're fun. This is why we do radio. But we're not actually disagreeing. But the point is, you as you said, it can go to extremes, and you get people
absolutely.
In Texas picking a playlist of 40 songs, and then that's it. And that's supposed to be format.
That's the extreme. You see, once you get people in there who only see one side of it, you're going to have extremes in either direction. And what I mean is, if you want to run a business, you want to play music for people, they're going to like it. You want to introduce new music. You certainly don't want to have it so rigid that you're going to only hear 40 songs and never hear anything else. And some people will say, but see, these are the 40 songs that people bought, and they'll use that as an example as research or something. On the other side is the guy that says, no, I'm going to play whatever I want, and I'm going to introduce them to everything. But at the end of the day, each side is a little too extreme to get the strike right down the middle.
That's totally fair. I mean, and also, if you were the kind of radio station either at PLJ or NEW that was so freeform that you would play a country song, then you play the Rolling Stones, and then you play like a 20-minute Haydn symphony. I mean, then people would be, there's no format there. I understand that.
I'll tell you something. This whole thing about formats is another subject, but when I was at the University of Pennsylvania, that was the first type of show that I did at WXVN. It was called Phase 2. And it was actually a learning experience for the students. I mean, it was like a routine where you'd pick something from classical, then bluegrass, then rock. It was very extreme like that. But it kind of doesn't make sense to people, but it was a good learning experience. But the formats that I've worked in have all revolved around rock music, new and or old. And you just made it, and what is rock music? You just said something very interesting. You might play a country song. Well, as you know, what people are calling rock music now is so limited that a long time ago, the Eagles, that's country music. That's country music now. But it was rock music then. Think about how many groups would not be called rock music now. It's ridiculous.
Well, I agree also with the limitations of terms as far as what we define.
Right.
I mean, rock and roll should be hugely broad in terms of terms. By the way, I have to say, we're talking with Carol Miller on Dave's Gone By. She is the DJ at WAXQ-FM in New York. That's
Q1043 is what it is.
1043 in
Q1043.
And let's see, she also...
I'm also on Sirius XM.
Ah, cool. And she's the author of Up All Night, her autobiography, and that's available at all the usual places you can get autobiographies, and HarperCollins. Find out about.
I think you'll have a good laugh if you read it, and also there's stuff you might find interesting, and there is a charity aspect because 5% of the royalties go to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Now,
can I ask Carol Miller why you left PLJ? Was it a money thing? Why did you go from PLJ to NEW?
No.
Okay, tell me. Why'd you leave?
I would have stayed there forever. And it is in the book what happened. PLJ was America's largest rock station. And we called it AOR, Album Oriented Rock. And in 1983, with all kinds of things happening, the advent of MTV, which I talk about, and how the videos affected the radio programmers, etc. Our director, whom I'm still very close with after all these years, a wonderful man named Larry Berger, he changed the format of the station from quote-unquote rock, AOR, to top 40. And the reason he did that was because they felt that with the new wave coming in and some of the old rock being, people were kind of confused as far as the listening audience. That's what the programmers thought. And they saw this whole MTV thing coming with all these pop singles coming up. And I talk about that in the book. So he actually changed the format of the station. I still didn't leave because, there are shades, I hate to use a term now because of that silly book,
right.
Shades of gray.
Yeah.
You call one thing rock, you call something else not rock. But as it turned out, he fired me, and he fired the other people who were just representative of real rock radio. And so that's why I left. I was fired because of the format change.
But here's my question: even though you're still good friends with him, isn't that the kind of stupid corporate radio thinking that we should all be fighting against?
Well, let's see now. Yeah. Yeah. All right, here it is in a nutshell. Because, guys, my friend, he said he probably wouldn't have fired me. Here's the deal. Everybody should be allowed to, just because I played a rock record doesn't mean I can't play another one. Doesn't mean that's the only thing I can do with my life. Just because, somebody made a funny analogy with Gilligan's Island. Whoever was the skipper, he can do something else besides be the skipper on Gilligan's Island. But no, when you work in that business, they want you to be the skipper.
Oh.
So what I'm saying is the business, yes, does lock people into things like that, and it really, really shouldn't happen. And but it did, because I became very, very identified with rock and Zeppelin and everything. And it's a two-sided prong. I mean, for a while, it's kind of like these guys, like Robert Plant. I'm not comparing myself to Robert Plant, but he goes around thinking he has a solo career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he does, but everybody else thinks he's in Led Zeppelin. So that's the point. You do get kind of locked into something if you have a identifiable job, and there's just so much you can do to counteract that. However, in the case of a DJ, I think it was a little extreme to say, well, this DJ only plays rock records, so they can't play the other record,
Cool.
I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. By the way, I need to tell people that it is just after 12 o'clock here at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. You're listening to Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio, the radio station of the University of Northern Colorado on uncradio.com. I'm Dave Lefkowitz. We are listening and doing Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio. My guest is Carol Miller, legendary New York disc jockey. She's on 104.3 in New York. That's WAXQ. I guess it's Q1043 is what you said.
Yeah, Q1043. You know, if you have iHeartRadio, all this stuff, there's an app. You can get all these radio stations. It's Q1043, New York's classic rock.
So,
I also have a syndicated show, speaking of Zeppelin, Get the Let Out. And it's on a bunch of stations around the country. And I'm on Sirius XM, so I'm just pretty busy putting out the patter, so to speak.
Well, that's what it's all about. Now let's get to some anecdotal things of your years at PLJ and also at NEW. We got to talk about that young, shy, giggling guy from New Jersey.
Yes.
Tell us about him.
Well, one of the great things that I've been able to do is meet people who became superstars, but before they were. And sometimes you just knew it. When you saw that person, you knew it. So I was going to school in Philadelphia, and going to Ocean Grove Community College was a guy who used to write for his college magazine called Bruce Springsteen. And people kind of knew that this guy was writing a lot of good stuff. You know, it was just the underground word, you know.
Uh-huh.
And he played around the area, and then he put out a record. He got signed in 1973, and at the time, I had graduated, and I was the music director at WMMR in Philadelphia. And, of course, that gave me, all the records would come in, and they were all great in that era. We'd play them, so I got to meet Bruce Springsteen. I got to actually walk up to him and say, you know, Bruce, this is just great. I just got a job in New York coming up, and I'm going to play your record there. And so I became the first person to play the record at Bruce Springsteen in New York. The crazy part was that that was only by default, because in the same way that we were already playing the record in Philadelphia, WNEW, the station in New York, should have been playing Bruce Springsteen, but they were having a political fight with his manager. So I didn't know that. They hired me. It's free form, and I played it anyway, so it was a moot point. It was all over.
Huh. And who are some of the other folks that you knew before the rest of us knew them?
Oh, gee, there was just so many people that I met on the way up, from the old days, like Jackson Brown and Warren Zevon. All these people were Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt showed up with her test pressing at my college station. She came in, WXPN. She said, I have a record. And, the funny thing is that I see some of these people now, and they look like my grandparents. And I'm not trying to flatter myself, but I figure maybe I'm like Zelig or something, It's like I keep seeing generations of people coming by, and I'm still playing records, and I laugh at myself. But, yeah, Bonnie Raitt, I'll tell anybody, Duran Duran, I saw them. It's just very, very funny. Pick an artist, I'll tell you if I saw them their first time. And
wow.
I have a lot of interesting stories in the book. Billy Joel, not all of them are in the book, though. Not all the stories, but Billy Joel, his first radio concert was in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Played the university. And there are a lot of people who really played in the same way that you might have indie groups now playing. And there are just so many of them that you can't keep track. Well, there were some major, major artists that became major artists that were doing that at that time, and there were fewer of them. So Simon and Garfunkel, they had started already, but they still played in my college,
So, but I would love some
ancient history there.
I would love some anecdotes though of like people like Warren Zevon or Simon and Garfunkel. Not just that they were there and you saw them early, but any stories about them.
Well, I think because my voice is kind of shot.
Oh, sure, of course.
I think, and it's also in my best interest to tell you that I've got some really funny stories in the book about Aerosmith.
Well, there's a reason for that. I mean, you and Steven Tyler. Yeah,
that's the point. I've got some funny stories about groups and artists, and it's not like it's all gossip or anything, but backstage, let's say at No Nukes concert, which became famous. Some of the stuff that was going on. I have a lot of inside stuff in the book that I think people will get a laugh out of, and also give you a little insight into what made a lot of these things tick. And so for me to tell the story right now with my voice sounding like a clown, it doesn't pay,
All right. Well, I'll tell people then to go to the book for the Steven Tyler stories because that's a major.
I'll tell you one thing about him.
Sure. Please.
That's how the book starts. But if you read the first chapter, you will see that he's the kind of person that still needs supervision. And, people have images of these rock stars, et cetera, but quite often a lot of them really are very, very nice but childlike. And that's why they get themselves into all kinds of trouble. And it's pretty funny and scary at the same time. So the opening chapter of the book, I think you'll get a laugh out of. At the same time, you'll go, oh, for goodness sakes. It kind of sets the tone. So
rock and roll.
Funny, there are only a few artists that I really think don't fall somewhere in that category, that are brilliant, geniuses, responsible people. They know what's going on, and they've been in charge all these years. One of them has to be Mick Jagger. Forget about it. I mean, I interviewed him a couple of years ago. Right on the money, no ego. He has kept this thing going. And Paul McCartney, there's just a few people who don't have the artiste mentality that manage to be right up front and artistes anyway, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, speaking of Paul McCartney, I should lay in there that way back when Paul had just been done with the Beatles and did his first concerts with Wings in town. You met him for the first time, this big exciting thing, Paul McCartney. And then he actually, what did he say to you?
He actually invited me to come to the show because apparently he and his wife were listening to me on the radio when they were driving out to one of their first shows with Wings at Nassau Coliseum in New York. And I had said that listeners were calling to say that the previous night's show was excellent and that they really liked the musicianship of Wings. And so he was very appreciative, so he invited me to meet him and Linda. I went to the Garden, and this is back in 1976, so I tell a funny story about having an audience with a Beatle, and how preposterous that was to me. And I think, that's just one of the stories I tell there that I hope people will get a nice chuckle out of.
One of the things also is that he told you that he and Linda listened to your show and listened to you on the radio. That's kind of neat. I don't know whether he was making that up to be nice or,
Today's day and age, it's an old term. We have so much media thrown at us from all over the place that you don't know where you heard anything anymore half the time. But when you have a limited number of sources, and you're on one of them, it's pretty influential. And you see, that's really what's going on with the confusion in radio, et cetera, today. Is where's the source of all the information? You can't have 1,000 people listening to 1,000 sources. So when you had a few sources and everybody listened to them, and you were on one of them, boy, you were in the hot seat. It was good.
It was great times in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I know your voice is going. I know I've kept you longer than I promised I would. We're going to let you go after one more question, but
sure.
I want to invite you back. In a couple of months when your voice is fine.
Yeah. I'd love to come back.
To be continued.
I think you're a very, very skilled and interesting interviewer.
Oh, well, thanks.
And I think the joke's on me because, it's like, you know what I say? It's like if my uncle ran the traffic bureau and I I could get all my parking tickets fixed, but I didn't have a car. That's what it's like today. I don't have a voice.
Oh, well, just today. You'll be fine in like 2 more days. I'm actually taking a voice and speech class at the university here just for fun. So I can give you all these tips on taking care, you know?
To be honest with you, this is very debilitating. And it isn't a psychological thing. What's going around in New York, believe it or not, is whooping cough.
Whoa. I
have whooping cough. Now, why? It's an antiquated illness, you think? We've all been immunized. But what happened was, apparently, there are some young mothers now, who do not feel that
immunization, right?
They want to give their children vaccines. And I think they're a little misguided, because some of these illnesses that were vanished are starting up again.
Bubonic plague is back. You know, there's people with the plague.
So people are susceptible to it, and I am, because, you know, I say I'm a cancer patient, so my immune system, blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
Anyway, so what I've had is whooping cough for the last I've been carrying it around. Now, that being said, what's your remedy for getting your voice back?
Well, I don't have a remedy for whooping cough, but we were just all the usual things that you've heard as a DJ or being in the business. Most of them are true. One thing I learned is that for cough drops, menthol is not necessarily a good thing. Stick with just sugar, even like sugar candies are perfectly fine, or Ludens instead of Halls, because you don't want anything drying up your saliva and your mucus.
You see, I'm always willing to learn.
Yeah.
Any new information is good information, Dave, don't you think?
Well, absolutely. Well, of course, you want to see if it's logical and if it works for you. Neti pots are pretty good.
I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing I can tell you, 40 years in the radio business, that you don't already know. So much of it is...
there is. You know, somebody did tell me something.
What?
Have you ever heard of Joan Hamburg?
Oh, of course, at WOR. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, Joan Hamburg is, well, I don't know. She's in her 80s or something, and she's still on the radio. Let me tell you something. Joan Hamburg, if she says she went to a particular restaurant, her listeners go. She is a very powerful woman, and so I had not met her before. Well, there was a function at the company that I work for, because WOR is now owned by the same company that owns my station. And we had a mixer. And I met Joan Hamburg. And besides the fact that she was really, really nice to me and invited me on her show upcoming, she said, you have to use my drink. She says, you go to the store and you buy the turmeric, the spice, T-U-M-E-R-I-C.
Yeah.
And put like a few tablespoons in the hot water with a little red pepper. And, you know, look, I'm a scientific person. Most of this stuff, who the hell cares? But you never know, right? If you're not going to waste money, why not? It actually is helping. And you put a little honey with it. It tastes disgusting, but it works.
Yep. Hey, that's. I mean, I'm not to get too off track, but when my wife or I had a cold a couple of years ago, we found an old Russian remedy for like the phlegm and the cough and all that stuff.
Oh, what was that?
But I honestly don't remember that much of it, but it was pretty gross. It was like this thick concoction of butter and honey and milk. Yeah. You would figure that'd be all bad for phlegm and things like that, but no, it brings the stuff up. You have to drink it hot.
That's the thing. Yeah. We're dealing with an illness. In my case, whooping cough. They banished it 100 years ago. Well, they didn't think it would come back, so they never found anything new to deal with it. So I say, let's go back to the Dark Ages and brew up some of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, what were they using way back when to make people feel better?
Well, you know, this is way off the topic.
Sure, but...
they had something in Russia, Romania called cupping.
Oh, yeah.
C-P-I-N-G, where they would actually take like a glass cup and light a little fire in it, get the air out, and stick it on somebody's chest, thinking that the vacuum was going to draw out all the fluids and stuff. I mean, there was some nutty stuff going around.
Oh, they still do that. In Jewish we call them bankas cups. You put them on, and
that's what I'm talking about.
You get these black and blue things on your body, but I don't know if it was. It was actually just bringing more blood flow to that area, so there was logic behind it.
Well, yeah.
And people still do it.
Nose.
Well, my God, boy, have we gotten off topic with Carol Miller here on.
You're a very interesting guy. I like that.
Well, and it's been incredibly interesting, and people didn't know, because Carol Miller, of course, has been in radio for all these years. She's a beautiful woman, sexy voice, sexy woman. So you figure, she wouldn't be intelligent too. But of course, we've spanned biology and law and history of rock, and she's written a book, Up All Night. It's available from HarperCollins. And remember, if you buy the book, 5% of the royalties go to cancer research. So that's a major thing. Last question.
You're never too old to rock and roll or anything else, whatever.
Well, wait, before I let you go, Carol, I did want to ask one more question. I'm going to give you the choice as to which anecdote you want to tell. They're both kind of short, I hope. But since it's almost the Jewish holidays, we can either talk about having dinner with Kiss, or you can tell the Lily Tomlin story. Pick one.
Oh, I'll take Kiss.
Okay.
Go for it. Two. Well, in a nutshell, back in 1977, Kiss were at the height of their popularity. And, I was playing them on the radio, and I come from a pretty, let's say, not orthodox, but not quite background. And I was supposed to be looking for a husband, even though I was on the rock radio. That's part of the funny things in the book. And from my neighborhood, in the book, you'll see I met these two nice guys, nice Jewish guys, Stan and Hi. Well, Stan is Paul Stanley, and Hi is Chaim Vitz, Gene Simmons. And I went out with Paul for a few months. We hit it off really well, and he was just like the great neighborhood guy. Meanwhile, the funny part is that he was in Kiss, but they weren't touring at the time. So I never saw him in those costumes. And we used to, go to, like, delis and Jewish things, all kinds of stuff. And then he left on tour. He's 25 or whatever, and that didn't work out. But the funny part about it is that I write a whole story about how I was so stupid that I had no idea that a worldwide rock star who has millions of girls chasing after them might not just want a regular girlfriend in time to settle down, because that's what he seemed like as a normal person. So I had some funny counterpoint in there. But he's a great guy, and in fact, he wrote me a really nice paragraph for a press release for this book. The back cover, I have Gene Simmons on it because his came through first. But he wrote me a really nice paragraph about knowing me from like all those years ago and blah, 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 blah. And he's like a great family guy. And to this day, I can't imagine still to put on those clothes and costumes, what goes through someone's head like that. It's still funny, And
you knew them, it's one thing to say I knew them when or before they were famous, but to know them when they're absolutely world famous and make no connection to the fact that this nice guy at the deli who's showing me, oh no, you gotta trim the fat off that brisket,
Yes.
5 days later is on stage playing for 80,000 people, in
I
Tokyo.
Will tell you one thing.
Yeah.
When he was kind enough to, he lives out in L.A., they live out in L.A., kind enough to say that he would write a little quote for my book for publicity. We went back and forth on the email. So he wrote back. One of the things he wrote was, hey, here, he was talking about the book, and he said, hey, here's something I don't get to say that often. He wrote, Mazel Tov. And I wrote back, as in, all right, people, Mazel Tov.
That it is the perfect story for the Jewish holidays, isn't it? So, And I wish you certainly an easy fast, although if it's for your health, you should eat something on Yom Kippur just to keep your strength and your...
I know, you and my grandma. You should rest in peace.
Just call me Bubby Dave. That's all. Bubby Dave.
Bubby Dave, okay.
Anyway, but speaking of, that was my last question for Carol Miller, but I guess we all do want to know, what's your social situation? Are you married? Where are you at with that?
Well, I'm married.
Mazel.
I've been married since 1994.
Wow.
I have a wonderful husband who's in the music business.
Is he Jewish?
He actually does. He actually is doing a lot of record mastering now, and he did a lot of the hip hop stuff. He's a rocker, but he, real pro top end stuff for Puffy and a lot of the R&B people in the '90s. He just did the latest Anthrax record as far as mixing. He's doing, Stone Sour. So he's an engineer. And we've been married now for 18 years. We don't have children because of my illness, which people say, do you have kids or whatever? I would have liked to, but because I had cancer, I couldn't.
Sure.
And so I could say it that way, but I'm a good aunt, and I got a great husband, and I like to have a good time, and I like to play records on the radio.
Which is what life is all about, having a good time and hearing the music that is the soundtrack to our lives. And it has been great, even with the whooping cough, even with the scratchy voice, it has been great hearing the musical sound of Carol Miller's voice on Dave's Gone By. Everybody get Up All Night from HarperCollins Books. Last time to tell you that it's 5% going to cancer charity if you buy the book. And how can people, I know you're as you said, on Q1043 in New York.
Very easy.
And you have a website, right? That would be...
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm on the station website. You go to... All you'd have to do, you can do two things. You go to Q1043.com and listen live. Or you can go to iHeartRadio, because they have about 800 stations around the country, and you go Classic Rock, and it'll pop up. I'm also on Sirius XM every morning on Channel 25. That's pre-recorded. Mm-hmm. So whenever that runs in the morning. And I'm on Get the Let Out on various stations around the country. But
is there one website?
Radio
is there one?
Really
I'm sorry.
The most important thing, what you are doing right now. So that's where my heart is.
Well, thank you. But is there one website where people can go for all your information? Do you have your own website? And then
no, you know what?
What?
You know why?
Why?
Because just go to Q1043.com and you click on DJs. Because I have information about the book, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I don't put out my own website. It's just too much.
Fair enough. You should only be always so busy that you don't have the time to make a website. That's my blessing for you for the Jewish New Year.
Thank you.
So, mazel tov to you. Get better soon. Get better immediately. Carol Miller.
I know. By Monday I have to.
Thank you so much for being in the neighborhood. It's been an absolute joy, and hopefully in a couple months we'll have you back. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, you won't recognize my voice, though.
It'll be the same beautiful voice we've heard for 40 years. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.